Right now, your brain is doing something extraordinary. As you listen to these words, billions of neurons are firing, creating thoughts, emotions, memories, and decisions in real time. Yet despite carrying the most complex object in the known universe inside our skulls, most of us understand surprisingly little about how our own minds work. Today's video explores some of the most fascinating psychology facts that reveal how human behavior is shaped, influenced, and sometimes manipulated without us even realizing it. One of the most surprising psychology facts is that your brain often makes decisions before you become consciously aware of them. We like to believe that we carefully think through every choice we make, but research suggests that unconscious processes begin preparing decisions moments before we consciously experience making them. In other words, your conscious mind may be receiving the final report rather than directing the entire operation. This doesn't mean free will is an illusion, but it does mean that much more is happening beneath the surface than most people realize. Another fascinating psychology fact involves first impressions. Studies have shown that people can form opinions about strangers in just a few seconds. Before a single meaningful conversation occurs, the brain is already making predictions about trustworthiness, competence, confidence, and friendliness. These judgments aren't always accurate, yet they can influence everything from friendships to job interviews. This explains why body language, posture, and facial expressions often matter more than people think. One of the most powerful psychology facts concerns attention. Most people assume they notice everything happening around them, but the truth is quite different. Human attention is extremely limited. Psychologists have demonstrated that when people focus intensely on one task, they can completely miss obvious events occurring right in front of them. This phenomenon, known as inattentional blindness, reveals that reality is not simply what exists around us. Reality is often what we pay attention to. Among the most interesting psychology facts is the idea that happiness is heavily influenced by comparison. Imagine receiving a salary increase. Initially, you feel excited and satisfied, but then you discover that a coworker received a larger raise. Suddenly, your happiness decreases, even though your situation hasn't changed. This happens because the human brain constantly compares itself to others. Social comparison has helped humans navigate social groups for thousands of years. But in the age of social media, it can become a source of anxiety and dissatisfaction. One psychology fact that surprises many people is that memories are far less reliable than we assume. Most people think of memory as a recording device that stores events exactly as they happened. In reality, memory works more like a storyteller. Each time you recall an event, your brain reconstructs it rather than replaying it. Details can be altered, forgotten, or unintentionally changed over time. This is why eyewitness testimony, while valuable, is not always perfectly accurate. Another remarkable psychology fact is that emotions can be contagious. Have you ever walked into a room where everyone seemed stressed and immediately felt uneasy yourself? Or spent time with an enthusiastic person and found your mood improving? Human beings possess mirror neuron systems that help us reflect and understand the emotions of others. This emotional contagion explains why the people you spend time with have such a powerful impact on your mindset. One of the most useful psychology facts for everyday life involves habits. Many people believe habits are driven by motivation, but psychology shows that habits are more strongly influenced by repetition and environment. The brain is constantly looking for ways to conserve energy. Once a behavior becomes automatic, it requires far less mental effort. This is why changing your environment is often more effective than relying solely on willpower. Here's a psychology fact that marketers understand very well. People are more likely to value something when they believe it is scarce. Limited time offers, exclusive memberships, and countdown timers all exploit this principle. When something appears rare or difficult to obtain, the brain automatically assigns greater value to it. Scarcity triggers a fear of missing out, making people more likely to act quickly. One of the strangest psychology facts is that people often remember unfinished tasks better than completed ones. This phenomenon is known as the Zeigarnik effect. When something remains incomplete, the brain keeps it active in memory, creating a sense of tension. This explains why cliffhangers are so effective in movies and why unfinished goals tend to linger in our thoughts. Another fascinating psychology fact is that confidence and competence are not always connected. Sometimes the least knowledgeable people are the most confident in their abilities, while highly skilled individuals underestimate themselves. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. It occurs because the knowledge required to perform a skill is often the same knowledge required to evaluate that skill accurately. One of the most powerful psychology facts relates to expectations. If you genuinely believe you can improve at something, you're more likely to persist through challenges and ultimately succeed. This phenomenon is linked to self-fulfilling prophecies. Our beliefs influence our actions, and our actions often influence outcomes. In many cases, what we expect becomes what we experience. Another psychology fact reveals why stories are so powerful. Human beings evolved to remember narratives better than isolated information. Facts alone are often forgotten, but stories create emotional connections that make information memorable. This is why great leaders, teachers, and communicators rely on storytelling rather than simply presenting data. Among the most eye-opening psychology facts is that loneliness can affect physical health almost as much as smoking or obesity. Human beings are social creatures. Meaningful relationships contribute not only to emotional well-being, but also to long-term physical health. Connection is not merely a luxury, it is a psychological necessity. One psychology fact that many people overlook is the impact of gratitude on the brain. Regularly focusing on positive experiences can gradually influence neural pathways. This doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is perfect. Instead, it means training the mind to recognize opportunities, progress, and positive experiences that might otherwise go unnoticed. Another remarkable psychology fact involves decision fatigue. Every decision consumes mental energy. Throughout the day, your brain gradually becomes less efficient at making choices. This is why successful individuals often simplify routine decisions. By reducing unnecessary choices, they preserve mental resources for more important matters. One of the most important psychology facts concerns identity. People often focus on changing behaviors without changing how they see themselves. Lasting transformation usually occurs when actions become linked to identity. Someone who sees themselves as a healthy person is more likely to exercise consistently than someone who simply wants to lose weight. Identity shapes behavior in powerful ways. Perhaps the most fascinating psychology fact is that the brain remains adaptable throughout life. This ability, known as neuroplasticity, means that your thoughts, habits, and experiences can physically reshape neural connections. Every new skill learned, every habit practiced, and every perspective challenged contributes to this ongoing process. You are literally changing your brain through the way you live. As we explore these psychology facts, a larger pattern begins to emerge. Human behavior is not random. It is shaped by attention, habits, emotions, beliefs, memories, relationships, and countless hidden influences operating beneath conscious awareness. Understanding these mechanisms doesn't give you complete control over your mind, but it does provide something incredibly valuable: awareness. Awareness changes everything. Once you understand why you think the way you think, you become less vulnerable to manipulation. Once you recognize how habits form, you can design better ones. Once you understand the role of attention, you can choose where to focus it. Knowledge transforms invisible forces into visible ones. The most valuable lesson hidden within all these psychology facts is that the quality of your life is often determined by the quality of your awareness. Most people move through life on autopilot, reacting rather than understanding. But when you begin studying psychology, you start seeing the hidden patterns behind human behavior. You begin recognizing why people act the way they do, including yourself. And perhaps that's the greatest psychological fact of all. The more you understand the human mind, the more power you gain to shape your own future. Not through manipulation, not through shortcuts, but through awareness, understanding, and intentional action. Because when you truly understand how the mind works, you stop being controlled by unconscious patterns and start becoming the author of your own story.